Council meeting to order at 6 p.m. Need a motion for adoption of the minutes.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on Monday, September 11th, 2017 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor? And that's carried. Just want to remind people that tonight we have Board of Revision, which has been advertised for 7 p.m. So we will have our council meeting. We will move into committee after that. If committee is not finished by 7, committee will stop and we'll move into Board of Revision and resume committee after the Board of Revision. We have no delegations this evening. We'll open the hearing for variation PC 5617. This is for Cook at 28 2nd Street Northwest. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Need a motion for closing the hearing.
Resolved that the public hearing for variation PC 56-17 Cook 28 2nd Street Northwest now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Dreger and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Randy Cook is applying for a variation order to allow for a front yard requirement to be reduced as he wishes to build a deck on the front of the property. And in that area, it appears that there's 11 other houses on the block, and only 2 of them comply with the required 7.5 meters setback. The remaining 9 houses on both sides of the street of this block vary from as little as approximately 3 meters to up to 5.49 meters. Similar requests have also been granted in a number of other places in the city. The building is in an R1 residential single-family zone. The application has been circulated to various city departments with no concerns, and public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. The recommendation is that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Randy Cook to vary the front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 5.63 meters at the property known as 28 2nd Street Northwest, which is legally described as Lot 289, Plan 12, Parish of Portage la Prairie, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll move into Finance Legislative Properties Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. Our last committee meeting, we talked a bit about the 2016 annual report, and I leafed through that with council. It includes a very comprehensive document that outlines this organization's accomplishments in 2016. I mean, it's a kind of a fluid document in terms of the projects that are ongoing, and obviously there were some messages in there, so I think it was a great report. It includes finality of our financial statements as well in 2016. As a reminder, once this report is approved, this will be put on our website for the public to view, and obviously if there's any questions that come out of that, we'll deal with them. But it is a recommendation of the Finance Committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie accept the 2016 annual report and authorize administration to post the report on the city website.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
The second item on my report here this evening is the continuation of the procurement process for approval. And so, as I mentioned in committee, this has been a long process that has been underway by our management team for some time. This has been kind of a contentious issue over this council's term and the previous one in terms of getting a good process down. I think we've been able to accomplish that with some very clear directives to administration, and then very clear understandings from our standpoint on what will come to council and what won't come to council. And so there is a detailed report there with an impact analysis. I won't go through it all. Hopefully council had a chance to review it, and we would entertain any questions now, I guess, that were not dealt with in committee before we move to the approval recommendation. Okay. It is a recommendation of the Finance Committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the city's new procurement request for proposals process that will incorporate sustainability and best value bid factors in this process, and that further, the city will incorporate enhanced municipal processes to gain efficiencies and effectively in this area. It is further recommended that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve implementation of the various functional recommendations as detailed in this report.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that does conclude my council report.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Dreger, please.
Thank you. We have for this evening the building report for July of 2017. This report was reviewed in committee 2 weeks ago, and I just submit them for any further questions there might be. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Dreger. Community Services Committee. Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have an item on the agenda tonight to look at. It's the Partnership for Climate Protection membership possibility that we looked at last meeting in committee. The federal municipal organization has initiated a process that allows all municipalities to sign up with as partners in an attempt to improve our sustainable practices and create an environmental protection policy that reduces greenhouse gas emissions and otherwise deals with sustainability in the long term for our municipal practices. And it's quite a lengthy if I could open it. Quite a lengthy resolution, but I could probably read it all. I guess the one thing of note is that we've already undertaken at least the first step in this process by doing an inventory of greenhouse gas emission in our current operations. In 2016, the City of Portage la Prairie hired EcoWest, a national nonprofit organization recognized as the Prairie Region FCM representative, to complete a greenhouse gas emissions inventory on our behalf. This document, and it's attached here for your viewing, this document meets the requirements as laid out in milestone number 1, creating a greenhouse gas emissions inventory and forecast. If Council should adopt the resolution and commit to the program requirements, administration would then begin working on milestone number 2 and 3 of the 5-step process. Milestone 2 involves passing a council resolution to actually set an emissions reductions target, and milestone 3 is developing a local action plan to achieve those targets. These 2 steps can often be completed simultaneously. So it is the administrative recommendation. Whereas the International Panel on Climate Change concludes in its 2007 fourth assessment report that there is new and stronger evidence that most of the warming observed over the last 50 years is attributable to human activities. And whereas the IPCC concludes that human influences on the climate have likely contributed to a rise in the sea level during the latter half of the 20th century, changed wind and temperature patterns, and likely increased the risk of heat waves, the area of land affected by droughts since the 1970s, and the frequency of heavy precipitation. And whereas the IPCC Special Report on Emission Scenarios projects an increase in global greenhouse gas emissions of 25 to 90% between 2000 and 2030, and whereas the IPCC observes that warming resulting from human influences could lead to some abrupt or irreversible impacts depending on the rate and magnitude of climate change, and whereas the IPCC anticipates the following impacts from climate change over the next century for North America: decreased snowpack, more winter flooding, reduced summer flows resulting from warming in western mountains, exacerbating competition for over-allocated water resources, increased aggregate yields of rain-fed agriculture by 5 to 20%, but with important variability among regions, and major challenges for crops that are grown close to their highest suitable temperature or that depend on highly used water resources. Increased number, intensity, and duration of heat waves for cities that currently experience them, creating potential for adverse health impacts and increased stress on coastal communities and habitats as a result of the interaction of climate change impacts and development and pollution. And whereas greenhouse gases, that is carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, released from burning coal, oil, and natural gas, from cutting trees and clearing land for agriculture and development, are the primary cause of climate change. And whereas the World Mayors and Municipal Leaders Declaration on Climate Change 2005 asserts the need for joint authority and global action on climate change. Whereas municipal investments in building retrofits, community energy systems, water conservation, renewable energy technologies, waste reduction, landfill gas capture, fleet management, public transit, and other sustainable measures reduce operating costs, help maintain community services, protect public health, and contribute to sustainable community development while cutting greenhouse gas emissions contributing to climate change. And whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, and ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, have established the Partners for Climate Protection program to provide a forum for municipal governments to share their knowledge and experience with other municipal governments on how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And whereas over 200 municipal governments across Canada, representing more than 75% of the population, have already committed to reducing corporate and community greenhouse gas emissions through the PCP program, and whereas PCP participants commit to working toward reducing greenhouse gas emissions in municipal operations by 20% below 2000 levels and by 6% below 2000 levels in the community within 10 years of joining the PCP program. And whereas the PCP program is based on a 5-milestone framework that involves completing a greenhouse gas inventory and forecast, setting a greenhouse gas reduction target and vision, developing a local action plan, implementing the plan, and monitoring results. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Portage la Prairie communicate to the FCM its participation in the PCP program and its commitment to achieve the milestones set in the PCP 5-milestone framework, and be it further resolved that the City of Portage la Prairie appoint the following: corporate staff person John Mark Nadeau, City Manager, and as an elected official Irvin Ferris, the Mayor, to oversee implementation of the PCP milestones and be the points of contact for the PCP program within the municipality. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Fraze and seconded by Councillor Budds. Any comments or questions on the resolution? All those in favor of the resolution? And that's carried.
And that ends my report.
Thank you, Councillor Fraze. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
Waterworks Committee has nothing to report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Transportation Committee, Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. As we spoke last committee meeting, we do have a couple of new sidewalks in our community this year due to our pavement program. And so this evening we would like to add additional sidewalk snow clearing. I did go through the areas. Again, they're in the recommendation, so I will move to resolve that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie authorize the expansion of the sidewalk snow clearing program to include the following walkways: Fisher Avenue from 8th Street Northwest to 6th Street Northeast, 7th Street Northwest from 6th Avenue West to 7th Avenue West, 6th Avenue West from 8th Street Northwest to 6th Street Northwest, and Gigot Avenue from 10th Street Northwest to 12th Street Northwest, and that the sidewalk snow clearing quality standard DOP Parks-1 be amended accordingly.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that's all I have for council this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Councillor Espy, Public Safety Committee, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Public Safety Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. We have some new business. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship. In August, the province of Manitoba announced grant funding was approved for water and wastewater facility funding in the amount of $3 million, with an additional $3 million to be contributed by the city utility in response to an administrative report outlining anticipated utility funding requirements for the next 5 years for the city of Portage la Prairie. The manager of the Manitoba Water Services Board has indicated there are funds available for the engineering work for Phase 2 of the proposed water treatment plant upgrading in their current annual budget. A formal application for funding with a resolution of council has been requested. A written agreement with the anticipated project scope and schedule will be prepared by Manitoba Water Services Board. It's proposed that this funding be allocated to water treatment and pumping facility upgrades. A functional design report prepared in May 2016 outlines the proposal upgrades to the water treatment plant facility, mainly to address the formation of potential of chlorinated organics, trihalomethanes, and turbidity control, and also to address the aging electronic control system and some operational enhancements. Phase 1 of the water treatment plant upgrading is nearing completion. When funding for the project is received from Manitoba Water Services Board, they will assume administrative responsibility for the project and the engineering services contract. Engineering design for the work at the water treatment plant upgrades will begin immediately. There are funds allocated to water treatment plant upgrading in the next 2 years in the 10-year capital plan. The recommendation is, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie apply to the Manitoba Water Services Board for funding in the amount of 50% of $6 million, or $3 million, for water and wastewater facility upgrading, and that Council authorize the Mayor and Manager of Administration to enter into a funding agreement with a specified grant amount of $3 million with the Manitoba Water Services Board.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Dreger. Any comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Dreger?
Is this in any way related toward the nutrient removal?
No, this is at the water treatment plant.
Okay.
And not at the wastewater plant.
It says wastewater facility upgrading as well.
I think this is all for water, isn't it?
That's the original offer from the province came in as water and wastewater, and what this is proposing is that it all be allocated to water treatment.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Our next new piece of business is Finance Committee. Councillor Budds, please.
Thank you. 2 pieces of new business. The first one is a request that we've received from the Mixed Doubles Curling Host Committee. And I don't think it's a secret to anyone here that Portage has been selected as the host for the Canadian curling event at Stripe Place on January 2nd to the 7th of 2018. I think the unique part about this is it is the Mixed Doubles Curling Trials, which will bring the top names in Canada in curling to Portage la Prairie for the first week of 2018. All looking to represent Canada at the 2018 Olympics. So what a great opportunity for Portage to showcase itself. So the host committee has asked the city to take a lead role in sponsoring this event, and to the tune of $10,000. And we would obviously get some ICE logos during the event. We would have media coverage. All of that is still being worked out, but the point being that it is to promote ourselves nationally. I know that there has been a lot of work that's recently been done within Portage la Prairie and with Travel Manitoba in terms of promoting Portage in this region. I think this is another step in a positive direction. So we would again have logos. You know, obviously there's some tickets I believe that would be included in this package. It's a comprehensive sponsorship package. The reason we're dealing with this is basically we can't wait. This host committee can't wait until we're done our 2018 budget deliberations, and this would be viewed as kind of a pre-budget approval for this sponsorship if we did move forward with it. So I know we've had discussions on this item already, and now it's brought before council. So it is an administrative recommendation and the recommendation of the Finance Committee that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the allocation of $10,000 toward the sponsorship of the 2018 Olympic Trials Mixed Doubles Curling event in the 2018 budget.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, and my other item is an update and approval looking for some small updates on our Broad Street properties, or otherwise known as Erickson Heights Limited. So just as a reminder, this is the same agreement that we did approve on June 12th to sell a 6-acre parcel in the city's south end to Broad Street Properties for the sum of $310,000. And we know a condition of that sale was the city undertake the role of primary developer for the installation of municipal services to the property line on a project which will see the creation of 168 new residential units, with construction to begin this next spring. And so I guess the further definition of services included more than just what we were able to provide municipally, and asking for also hydro, gas, telecom, and internet. So negotiations were initiated by PRED with the related agencies, and Hydro has identified that there is an existing 3-phase power line running along the southern perimeter of the property, so there will be no costs associated with that installation aside from the connection fee to the proponent's buildings. And Manitoba Hydro has also confirmed that there is a natural gas line at 9th Street, and they will extend services to the site, again, at their cost. Bell MTS stated that originally a fee of $41,000 was going to be had to be outlaid in order to bring those services in there. But again, a concession has been made, recognizing that the future opportunity for both service providers is large. So basically, we report, PRED reports that hydro, gas, and telecom services will be brought to that site, essentially at no cost by those vendors. So we are moving along this process very quickly. We initiated a development plan, and which is awaiting ministerial approval, and we've also initiated a rezoning component. So there's a couple of confirmation of final terms, and that is the proponent will be paying a deposit of $75,000 to be held in trust as soon as the wire details are communicated. The closing date is being moved up a little bit, and we've confirmed with our operations department that all service connections can be completed by that time, and it's also recommended by our legal counsel with the intention that the city is in receipt of the full purchase price before initiating any costs related to the infrastructure installation, minimizing our financial risk. And I think that's the important part. So we do know that we will get full purchase price before initiating any costs related to infrastructure. The purchase agreement has been made between the City of Portage la Prairie and Erickson Heights, so you might wonder what that's about, and that's just a subsidiary company of Broad Street Properties, who is also a subsidiary company of another owner company. So with that being said, it is the recommendation of the Finance Committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie accept the purchase agreement as negotiated with Erickson Heights Limited, a subsidiary company of Broad Street Properties.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And that concludes our new business. We have no old business, so we are going to adjourn council at 6:23 p.m. and we're going to move right into committee. We call committee to order at 6:23 p.m. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
In the spirit of sponsorship, we are faced with another request from the Rotary Club, who is partnering with the Portage Terriers by hosting the Boston's Bruin alumni game with headliner Ray Bork in celebration of Terriers' 50th anniversary. So that's coming this December, and so there's quite an event that will be their, what I'll call their sportsman dinner, inclusive of an alumni game against the alumni Portage Terriers. And there's a VIP dinner, get-together, etc. And basically now we are being asked to help make this possible and help make it this weekend a success. So there's several packages that are available, and you can see the bronze, the silver, the gold, and diamond. And should be noted that all proceeds do go to the Rotary Club and to the Portage Terriers. So just some items for consideration. We could consider purchasing a package using funds from the 2017 Hosting Assistance Grant. and only because I know that it has not all been used up, and that is one option for us. I guess the thing that we need to consider is something that we want to support to begin with, and I think the first question that I have through this process is, this is very similar to what the Portage Rotary Club did with the Montreal Canadiens a few years ago, and what type of a precedent did council set at that time in terms of sponsorship? And so the answer to that question was that the City of Council did zero, and so I caution with regards to this request if council did not approve the previous one. So that is something I can see clearly, that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie provide direction to administration on what we want to do. So I open that up for thoughts.
Just one more thing, though.
Yep.
The Rotary at the time never made a request to council at that time.
Okay. So a little different. There was no official request to council at that time, just for clarity.
Councillor Espy?
Just a few thoughts. I'm not against being open to sponsoring this event at all, not in the least. I think it would be worthwhile to have the bulk of our debate right before we actually have the vote, but I don't know if that's necessarily even a precedent if there was no request ever put forward. But for those that don't know, can somebody just enlighten us that where the money from Rotary Club actually goes?
Well, in the past, I know a fair amount has gone into developing active transportation paths within the city of Portage. There's a few Rotarians here, if they'd like to speak on plans. Open it up.
The Republic of Manitoba Park is now called the Rotary Republic of Manitoba Park, and they've put a fair bit of money in there. Money generally goes to projects that fit under the umbrella of the Rotary's mandate. So the funds that were raised through this event would definitely go back into the community. Having said that, however, I'm not sure I can articulate why or why not the city should purchase sponsorship for this. I'm a little hesitant to make it a City of Portage la Prairie sponsorship, but I can't quite make up my mind why not.
I guess the reason I ask about Rotary, because I know that most of that money gets put back into the community anyway.
It does, absolutely.
So it seems like a very easy decision to sponsor this. If I can just add one more thing, sir. The other factor that council may want to consider is the split of proceeds between Rotary and the Terrier is a 75-25 split in favor of the Terriers.
Oh, okay.
So whatever proceeds are made during that weekend, 75% goes to Terrier.
But we do support the Terriers golf tournament, which is also a fundraiser, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. So what we'll do at next council meeting, it's a good conversation. We'll have to focus on if we want to do it and what level of sponsorship. So we do know that it's not like it's a budgetary item in terms of there is some money in that hosting assistance grant, which has not been spoken for. And so we did hear in previous third quarter reports that, or half yearly reports, sorry, that we would be slightly ahead of budget. So this is an item where we could fit into budget if we wanted to. It's more around whether this is something we want to support. So council will need to come up with that decision at next meeting. My other item in committee is our normal fees and charges. So every year we do go through our fees and charges bylaw for approval, and not articulating all of the changes, but highlighting some of them. I think there's some positives in here. There's a ticket discount. So if you pay your parking ticket within a period of 12 days currently, then it's discounted, and now that's looking to be expanded to 14 days. So that's in compliance with new regulations implemented in 2017. Looking to get some deposit fees on traffic control device rentals to ensure items are returned to the city promptly and in good order, and quite likely that would be parking signs and you know what I mean. Deterrence for no parking, that type of stuff.
Barricades.
Barricades. Thank you, Councillor Wall. Different one here in recycling boxes. So basically, administration is recommending to discontinue the sale and maintenance of green recycle boxes. So that is something that we currently do, and city and residents can purchase additional blue boxes from a local retailer of choice for their use. The program has become costly to administer and is not sustainable to continue without increasing recycle box prices well beyond the competitive market in this area. So we could continue to sell them, we just would be out of market, and who's going to buy them? And then we've got costly overhead, so we're looking to get out of that. And the one that would be of interest to many people is the garage sale. So we're recommending discontinuing the requirement for city residents to register their garage sale and implement an honor system for residents not to exceed the maximum of 2 sales per year. Current registration fee of $5 doesn't meet our cost to administer this service, because there is quite a bit of work going out and saying you to residents that did not take down their garage sale signs, etc. So basically we looked at competitive municipalities to say it's just not something that's being done, so recommending to kind of remove that. And it is somewhat, I wouldn't consider it a big obstacle for citizens, but it's one more thing, so removing that. And so just a few other housekeeping issues, but is there any further comments on that? Yes.
If I could just get clarification, as you said, the garage sale sign thing is something that we might not look at. The fee for not removing your garage sale sign would still remain in the 2018 fees and charges, just not to the registration of a garage sale.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So
yeah,
the
yeah,
expectation
you still got to take it
still
down,
to take your
absolutely.
signs down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a question around the garage sale limit of 2 in the honor system. So this preceded anybody that's sitting here on council, and I do remember some talk at the time when the council of the day brought it in, and there was complaints from some neighborhoods where neighbors were operating what in essence was a small business, almost every week having a garage sale. So as a way of tracking these things and making sure that there was a response to concerns that were raised within the community, how would we police the honor system if we were getting complaints from a neighborhood saying this person's doing it all the time? Or
My response would be you don't police the honor system. I guess it would be complaint driven if it was a situation where it would be going full circle again and seeing after a couple of years if that was the situation occur. Is there anything you'd add to that, Jam, in terms of the recommendation?
No, that's how we saw it as well.
So, if there's no further questions, that does conclude my committee report, and those 2 items will be coming to council for our decision-making next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. City Planning and Economic Development. Councillor Dreger, please.
One item on the agenda this evening, and that is the permit report from the Portage la Prairie Planning District. And we see that in August, 26 permits were sold for a total year-to-date of 129, and that compares to last year's of 101. The values of those permits are also up slightly over last year. And that is all I have to report this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Dreger. Community Services Committee. Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Worship. One item that we're going to be looking at next council meeting is the potential renewal of our grass cutting contract for a further 1-year term. Partly because, looking ahead at our own Parks Department, we're seeing the possibility of some significant retirements in the near future. And it's simply felt by administration that renewing the existing contract with the existing grass cutting company would be the best way to maintain the continuity of that program in the face of significant changes in our own Parks Department. And we do have the right, so it would just be a matter of exercising the option to renew the contract with a cost of living increase, as opposed to calling for new tenders.
Councillor Buds, you had a question?
I did. When I first read this committee report, I agreed with the report, and then I got looking at it a bit further. And I think that this is one of these opportunities when I compare it to our new procurement policy that we have a $153,000 contract that we are basically taking an extension on. And I know this is a contract that's kind of flip-flop back and forth for vendors and suppliers over the years. And I view this as an opportunity to put this through our new procurement policy process. And it's October 31st, so we still have enough time, in my opinion, to do that. I welcome comments from administration if that's still something that you feel that you could do if the procurement policy now has been approved and in fact in place. I don't necessarily, and I wouldn't mind feedback from administration, whether or not the succession issue is a large enough issue to change vendors. I don't view that personally as being something that cutting our grass is cutting our grass. That's just my take on it. So I would like to consider putting this through the process. I welcome thoughts.
I would support that. I don't want much to offer. That's all I can say.
I'll just defer to Kelly for now, having originating the report.
Yes, in response to timelines, yep, I believe we have time to issue a proposal call or a tender prior to next spring.
What would be the cost of putting out the tender?
Well, I think the cost is just all in staff time. That's it.
Okay.
Other comments, questions?
I just have a question. Councillor Buds, did you have in mind any particular qualitative or other consideration to put into this bid process to make it fit our new policy?
No, our procurement policy is pretty clear in terms of this type of stuff would fall into a different tender process. And so I look at this as saying, here's an opportunity for us. We're arbitrarily just adding on, and I know it's within our right under the contract, we're adding on one more year where we could use this as the expiry of the contract is clear, and we can use this as an example on how this process works. And I think it's definitely a competitive way to go. Than to arbitrarily just saying because we have some staff that are going to be leaving that we should just take the price plus the CPI index and add another year on it. That's just my take on it.
I'm not arguing that. I was just curious whether there was some environmental issue or some other question we could put to the proposal. See if somebody came up with a better idea for how to recycle a product or...
Well, it is also an opportunity to review the tender, see if you want to add or delete anything or modify the conditions of the contract and so on. So you get to open it up and do that before you put it out to tender.
So am I hearing that we'd rather do that than bring this to council next time?
Seems to be a fair bit of support for that. Did you want a show of hands or?
No, I just want to give administration some direction, that's all, because if we don't, this is what's going to be coming to council next time, and therefore that's an extra 2 weeks of delay in, if we're doing the other process, that's all. So
Everybody sounds like they're comfortable with the idea?
Sure.
Well, I don't mind trying a new way.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
That's the only issue from Community Services Committee that's coming up next week, so that would conclude my input.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fraze. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
Waterworks Committee has nothing this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Draycott, Transportation Committee.
Nothing in Transportation Committee this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. And Councillor Espy.
Public Safety Committee has nothing to report this evening, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. We'll open up question period. If somebody had a question for council, we will endeavor to answer it for you. Okay, final last call for questions. Okay. Then committee is adjourned at 6:39 p.m. and Board of Revision will resume here at 7 p.m. sharp.
Probably do that.
Other than